You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 15. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Hello and welcome to the Tricorder Transmissions. I'm Craig Cohen.
And I'm Jeff Hewlett.
And this week on the show, we're going to be talking about episode number 15, Shore Leave. But before that, Jeff, I know you recently met Weird Al Yankovic.
Yeah, I did. It was a chiller convention here in New Jersey. It was something that I've actually been waiting about 30-ish years to do. So
Yeah.
I was really happy to finally shake hands with the guy and tell him how much I enjoy his work.
Yeah, that is awesome. I think anybody who sort of grew up in the early 80s, or was even, sort of in, their hip years in the 80s, I think it's hard to find those people, that weren't at least aware of Weird Al and, even more so into him. I mean, he was such a sort of a pop culture icon at the time. And the fact that he's still relevant 30 plus years later really speaks to the quality of his song parodies.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just stayed pretty consistent album after album. He's gotten better and better. And, as I've gotten older and his music has progressed, he's gotten into stuff that I don't recognize anymore because he does more modern stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the best memories I have is back in when I was a young kid, the first LP I ever bought when I was around 9-ish years old with my own money was his first album when it came out in 1983.
Oh, that's great.
So,
I actually have very few vinyl LPs here at my house. And I think a couple of the ones that I do have are actually early Weird Al,
Nice.
In 3D.
That's his second one.
Yeah, I'll have to dig them out and see. I mean, I think I have like the Ghostbusters soundtrack, some Weird Al stuff. I mean, it's very, very, I didn't hold on to many of my records.
Yeah, it's
but
funny.
The reason we're talking about Weird Al is there is a Star Trek connection. And over the years, he's referenced Star Trek in a lot of songs. And I know a lot of people think of him from Star Wars with Yoda and the whole American Pie parody he did to The Phantom Menace. But he's actually sung about Star Trek a lot of times. And Jeff, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Uh-oh.
Off the top of your head, can you think of any Trek references over Weird Al's career?
Yeah. It's funny because one of my favorite, more recent, well, I guess it's kind of not as recent as, it's a few albums back, but he did a song called eBay. It was a parody of eBay itself. And it was a parody of, I think, was it a New Kids on the Block song, or was it was one of those boy bands. But at any rate, he's singing about things, about eBay in general, things you can buy and all these wacky items. And one of the lines was, tell me why I bid on Shatner's old toupee, which was kind of a riff on Shatner because Shatner actually sold his kidney stone
in
an online auction not long before that. So it's kind of a riff on Star Trek and a riff on Shatner.
Oh, that's
at the
funny.
same time.
Yeah, that's cool. That is a correct reference. Also on that same album, Poodle Hat, there was a song called Genius in France, and he sang the line, "I'm not even welcome at the Star Trek convention."
Oof.
So,
ouch.
But if you go all the way back to Even Worse, which was, I guess, back in the late 80s, it was sort of his response to, I guess, Michael Jackson's Bad. He had a song called Stuck in a Closet with Vanna White. And I think that was one of the original songs.
That was one of his original songs, yeah.
Yeah, and there's the line, "Suddenly I'm bowling on the Starship Enterprise."
Yeah, I vaguely remember that one because I was always a big fan of his parodies, but the songs that he wrote himself I wasn't always a fan of. So there was usually, a handful of those on every album with the parodies, and some of them were really good, and some of them were ones that I didn't really listen to that often. I think that the Vanna White song was one of the ones I didn't listen to as often.
Mm-hmm. Now, on some of his recent stuff, he had the album Running with Scissors.
Yep.
There's a song called Albuquerque where this is Trek related in that it name checks Leonard Nimoy.
Mm-hmm.
And the line is, a local radio station had this contest to see who could correctly guess the number of molecules in Leonard Nimoy's butt.
That's a little bit wacky. I wonder how you could correctly guess that.
I don't know. I guess, yeah.
That's a lot of molecules.
Yes. So, and then jumping ahead, he has a song that he only played live called Gee, I'm a Nerd, where he says, I've seen each Star Trek 80 times. And then off of Straight Outta Linwood, he's got 2 songs. He's got the parody of You're Beautiful called You're Pitiful. And the line is, your homemade Star Trek uniform really ain't impressing me.
Mm-hmm.
And then on White and Nerdy, he's got the line, I'm fluent in JavaScript as well as Klingon. And only question I ever thought was hard was, do I like Kirk or do I like Picard? And at the end of that video, he actually gives the Vulcan salute.
Nice. And, just for the record, I don't think that's a very hard question at all. I think you can guess the way I lean on that. No disrespect to Patrick Stewart. I'm a big Pat Stu fan. But
yeah, maybe down the road we will do a supplemental where we'll bring on anybody who wants to come on and sort of plead their case for either captain. But oof. I think one of the main things that they did with the Next Generation was, or actually every captain that they've done since Kirk, Deep Space Nine with Sisko and then Janeway and Archer. I think what they did is they tried to show all the different personality types that could be a captain.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So it's one of it was kind of cool of them to do that because they could have just been like, okay, like Kirk to Pike isn't that extreme.
No.
Kirk to Picard is pretty extreme though.
It is.
Yeah, so that's kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
And before we sort of get off the Weird Al track, these are the references that I think I was aware of or that I was able to dig up. If there are any other references out there that you've picked up over the years or any other Star Trek references and songs, feel free to hit us up on Twitter at TTT_pod or on Facebook where you can find us under the Tricorder Transmissions, or you can go to the tricordertransmissions.com where we have links to all of our social media, and you can contact us for anything, not just Weird Al or Star Trek parody lyrics, but if you have comments on episodes or fact checking if we get something wrong,
yeah,
please alert it to us because via the Facebook we're very, very easy to interact with.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right, so do you want to jump into Shore Leave?
Yeah, let's do it. So, first air date was December 29th of 1966.
The last Star Trek you could watch in 1966.
Yeah, go figure. And the remaster was 26th of May of 2007.
And I have the TV guide entry here from the week it aired.
All right.
And it reads, in deep space, the USS Enterprise makes a rest and recreation stop that proves anything but restful. Captain Kirk has selected an apparently ideal site for his crew's much-needed furloughs, yet there is something wrong. The advanced party cites storybook characters, living persons from their own past, and a host of other strange objects. Even the super-logical Mr. Spock is mystified. Robert Spar directed from a script by Theodore Sturgeon. Kirk, William Shatner, Spock, Leonard Nimoy, McCoy, DeForest Kelley, Sulu, George Takei, and this was actually from the rerun, rerun 60 minutes. That is Shore Leave, and when you're ready, I'm ready, Jeff.
All right, I am definitely ready. So let's get started in 3, 2, 1.
So here is my first gripe with the remastering of Star Trek, the original series. This is the only episode of the series where in the establishing shot, the Enterprise flies from right to left. And for the remaster, they corrected it.
Oh, very interesting.
No idea why. I don't know if it was a mistake for the original airing.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally decided to fix it in the remastering or what. But
what is that girl? She's rubbing his back?
Yes.
And Yeoman is rubbing his back.
Yeah, and Kirk thinks it's Spock at first. And it turns out it's not. And then he seems a little annoyed. And we also get a very, very obvious clue at the beginning of this episode that Captain Kirk is in need of some time off because he stumbles when trying to remember the star date.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we're meant to. I think they've been. This says they've been in. How long has this been? 3 months or something like that,
Yeah,
with no break.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll wait until till the reveal goes on here at the end of the teaser to bring up one of my gripes about this.
Okay.
Particular, I have a couple of gripes with this episode, but all right, so we're taking a look at McCoy and Sulu. This is one really great thing about this episode, though, is that Sulu finally gets to do stuff. He always gets relegated to hanging out on the bridge with a couple of lines. He's finally getting to actually be on a planet, enjoy himself a little bit. Look at the smile on his face. It's like, do you think Captain will authorize shore leave here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is on location,
Yep.
and this is at what at the time was called Africa, USA, a 600-acre ranch in Acton, California. Today it's known as the Shambhala Preserve, a wild animal sanctuary founded by actress Tippi Hedren of The Birds in the mid-'80s.
I had no idea. That's really cool, man.
And then also later on in the episode, we're going to see a very iconic location.
Okay, I will hold on and wait for you to point that out.
So this is kind of cool. We actually see Sulu doing botanist type stuff.
Yeah. So, and that's a kind of a hearkening back to the Man Trap.
Yeah, where he was a botanist.
So here we go.
Yeah, we see the rabbit.
Now, I'll tell you right now, and again, here we go with the hand tipping. Mm-hmm. This is one of, I would say, is a very few Star Trek episodes that turn me off with the teaser. It takes me right out of Star Trek, actually, with this Alice in Wonderland stuff. And I don't know, man. What about you? I mean, do you watch this episode, and when you see the guy, it's obviously a dude in a rabbit costume. Can you suspend your disbelief at this?
No. And apparently, I've been reading this excellent book called These Are the Voyages, which chronicles the making of season 1. And apparently, one of the first notes regarding this script was lose the rabbit because everybody is going to think it's a man in a suit. And Gene Roddenberry had a vacation scheduled, and he was supposed to send off a memo to one of the producers, and he forgot. And when he got back, he got to his desk and saw the memo was still there, rushed out to the set, but they had already filmed the sequence.
Oh, good Lord. Too late.
The show being the way it was in terms of, constantly being, having budget problems.
Oh, yeah.
And, they had to use everything they shot. So the rabbit suit stayed.
Yeah. And, this episode also had script problems. It was another one of those episodes that was being rewritten as it was being shot.
Yeah.
So, this thing is plagued with issues. So,
and we should probably talk about the writing right away because it was written by famed, science fiction author Theodore Sturgeon, who really came to prominence in the 50s. He wrote More Than Human, which won the 1954 International Fantasy Award. He was really a pretty influential sci-fi writer. He was inducted into the Sci-Fi Hall of Fame in 2000. It was the 5th class for that induction, and he contributed a lot to science fiction in general. And this was really his first stab at television. And there were Gene Roddenberry did do some uncredited rewriting on this. But it definitely makes for an interesting story. And also, I mean, having a guy like Theodore Sturgeon working on your program had to, bring a huge pedigree to the show, especially for science fiction fans.
Yeah, definitely.
So we just left Yeoman Barrows.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Now we're seeing inexplicably Captain Kirk has a completely different female yeoman. So Janice Rand, who has been his yeoman for a while now, poof.
Yeah.
Gone. And with no explanation whatsoever for the audience.
And this will be the only episode that we see Yeoman Tonya Barrows on officially.
Right.
If you do Google Yeoman Tanya Barrows, you might get some links to some Star Trek fan fiction, which has some entertaining and
I'll bet
adult
it does.
fan fiction related to Barrows and Dr. McCoy.
I will bet that it does. Oh my god.
So now this is a cool scene because McCoy's sort of relaying what he saw on the planet, and at the same time, Spock is trying to convince Kirk that he needs to go on shore leave, which is something Kirk doesn't want to do.
Right, and Spock is going to say that he doesn't want to go on shore leave because Vulcans, think it's a waste of time.
Yeah, when a Vulcan rests, their rest doesn't involve exerting energy, which is
which actually makes sense.
Do. Oh yeah,
right?
It's logical.
yeah, he kind of sits in a chair and maybe meditates or reads or something of that nature. Who knows?
And Spock gets kind of tricky with Kirk here. He gives these stats about a crew member whose production rate or something is decreased by 9%, and he gives all the other stats. And Kirk's and Kirk says, "Well, I would tell that crew member he has to go on shore leave."
Yep.
And Spock says, "That
down
crew
9 to
name,
12%." Yeah.
That crew member's name is James T. Kirk.
That's much too low a rating. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Now we find out that they're constantly creating these ratings of the crew members, and that
down 9 to 12%. That's pretty substantial.
Significant. Yeah. James Kirk. Oh, I called you out. There's a little boner for you. Now get the hell out of here. I'll handle things while you're gone, there, Kirk. So now here's. I held it off until now because this is the perfect time to bring this up. Now, one thing that really bugs me about this episode is here's the reveal of the gun, the revolver. By the way, there's a trap rock with a revolver in it. But now, you would think, Starfleet's full of regulations, right? They always have rules for all kinds of stuff, Prime Directive, what have you. So it's okay for you to take shore leave on an uncharted alien planet? That's cool.
Well, they do have a scouting party.
Yeah, but a scouting party is going to look at a small, tiny fraction of this planet, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to look at the entire planet. Granted, maybe the sensors can look at it. But, wouldn't there be some sort of a rule like you have to put in a space dock or some sort of an authorized, Starfleet Alliance, a planet somewhere, a colony, something?
Yeah. So real quick, I don't want to interrupt this discussion, but we had a goof here. He addresses Rodriguez, who is the male, and Teller, who is actually Angela Martine from the Balance of Terror.
Yeah, her fiance just bit the dust.
But apparently in the script, she was originally referred to as Teller. It was a different character. They ended up using the same actress, and there was a botched line that was never corrected.
Yep. Even in the remaster.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, you know what? I mean, they're on a 5-year mission here. They're away from home. How much leeway does the captain get in this? I mean, if they're really not going to sort of screw with the environment of the planet, does the Prime Directive really come into play?
Well, I don't even really get so much the Prime Directive. I'm saying that, obviously we've come across, in Balance of Terror, there were obviously Starfleet outposts. We know that there are other Federation planets out there, Vulcan. I mean, there's other ones. There's colonies. We've heard about colonies, and they're constantly going past them or near them. It just seems kind of weird to me that it would be okay for in a previously uncharted, unexplored planet to be an acceptable location to send your people for shore leave, and and I'm proven right by what happens in this episode. So that's what really confused me is they have rules for all kinds of stuff, but this is acceptable.
So the captain seems to be agreeing with you, Jeff, because he hears McCoy's story about the rabbit and seeing Alice from Alice in Wonderland, and says, until we've got this straightened out, I am putting a hold on any shore leave down on this planet.
Yeah. Now, who could blame him, man? You never know. Uh-oh, and there's the gunshot. Boom.
And you count them. There are 4 gunshots here, which will come into play later on.
And look at how fast they're running. What a heck of a shot that is. You see the way the camera moved?
We're going to talk about the direction in a little while, but yeah, that's one of the things I really like about this episode. Now, one thing to watch for as this scene plays is look at how out of breath Barrows is for the entirety of the scene. Kirk seems to get over it. McCoy seems to get over it, but she is winded for the duration.
Wow.
And I don't know if that was an acting choice or just the way the scene was edited.
Yeah, look, she's really heaving, man.
It won't stop.
And her hair's all messed up.
So we learned that Sulu has this affinity for antique guns or antique weapons in general.
Yeah, well, he's talked about swords before, right? So it only makes sense. And of course, Kirk is going to confiscate this.
Yeah.
It fires lead pellets propelled by expending gases from a chemical explosion.
See, and there's Barrow still huffing and puffing.
Yeah. So she's a method actor.
Yes.
But Dr. McCoy's rabbit, he must have gone through here and he hops. So therefore his footprints are exactly in line with each other.
And I think the biggest problem here is there aren't supposed to be any animals on this planet.
Right.
So there's really no explanation for it. And this is only the second time now over the course of the 15 episodes that we've watched where they actually shot a location as opposed to a set. And that's really one thing that really sets these episodes apart is because when you're on location, you can instantly tell it because back then, no matter how good your set was, you couldn't do what they're doing here with a lake and the trees and the wind.
Yep.
And it really sort of, adds a different element to this
I love
the
this
show.
contraption, by the way.
Yes,
Just
we
not
have
and the spray paint on the tree.
Yeah, the antenna
great.
tracking them, which is sort of cool. It sort of, gives the idea that there's something going on here.
Yeah, I like you get a better look at it shortly. I wonder if this was some sort of something they had to produce, a prop they had to make, this funky antenna, or it was actually a piece of something real. I'm not sure about that. I looked it up earlier to try to see if there was anything. Of course, now Kirk is mentioning this Finnegan guy, by the way. This is a little bit of a foreshadowing.
Yeah, I guess he talks about his time at Starfleet. And he talks about he's the type of guy that would prop a bucket of water on a half-open door. And it made me immediately think, would Kirk have ever existed in a world where they had half-open doors?
Wow. Wow, you just blew my mind.
It just jumped out at me as a line where, I don't remember ever seeing, except for, an episode like Miri where they're, in the...
Right.
in a stunted, version of Earth's history, but in their universe or in their, their time frame,
the doors
they
are automatic.
have doors that open and shut up to down.
right, or side to side.
Yeah,
but they don't open traditionally. Up and here we go. Here's our man Finnegan,
who we learn was an upperclassman when Kirk was in, I guess, Starfleet, or whatever the. I guess the academic version of Starfleet. What is that? Is that Starfleet?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was in the academy. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was sort of, I guess, his upperclassman, and he sort of, I guess, hazed him, if you will.
Yeah. And that's another problem I have with this. Kirk, I have a problem envisioning Kirk
like
being the victim
Kirk?
Of a bully like that. It just doesn't. It seems to me like, this guy back in the academy would try once. Kirk would knock him on his butt, and that would be the end of it. Like, I just can't see Kirk putting up with that so much that he remembers all of it, and it would manifest it here on this shore leave planet. I don't know.
Yeah.
But here's another running shot with a dolly.
He's really hauling too, man.
They all are. Even you got to give it to Forrest Kelly. He might have had a heart attack. Look at that. He's really going.
So here we have the discovery that Yeoman Barrows has been attacked
By
the
whom?
spray-painted tree.
Yes, there it is, the spray-painted tree.
And her tunic is ripped.
Yeah, so supposedly, from what I understand, the red spray paint that you'll see throughout the episode on rocks and trees was an attempt to make this look like more of an exotic place than it really was.
Okay.
Didn't work for me. Did not work for me. So far, we're seeing that everybody who's down on this planet is having weird things happen to them, right? So Sulu finds this gun, which really isn't a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Kirk gets his butt kicked by Finnegan, and McCoy thinks he's going nuts, and the yeoman here has been, I guess, assaulted by her fantasy man, right?
Yeah, and McCoy, he gets big points here for guessing that it's Don Juan.
Yeah, Don Juan.
I mean, the explanation is like a guy with a cape, I think she says.
Could have been anybody. Could have been Superman.
And he's like, it sounds like Don Juan.
Yeah, it sounds like Don Juan to me. He ran after. Really, yeah. So I'm wondering, I don't want to jump the gun here and talk about what's going on here, because we're gonna get to that in the future. But I have to wonder, why was she thinking about Don Juan? Really?
Yeah, well, especially considering that later on she starts thinking about, knights and being a princess. And...
Yeah, I mean, come on, dude. Like, she sees McCoy losing his marbles about this rabbit, right? She's not thinking about that, though.
Yeah.
She sees Sulu firing the gun. She's not thinking about that, though. She's thinking about Don Juan. and you have to, it's so far in the future. Would she really would that be a fantasy of hers?
Yeah.
Don Juan of all, wouldn't they have other people that showed up sometime between Don Juan's time and Star Trek time that were more appealing to women than Don Juan? I don't know. Maybe I'm looking too deep. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, we have a character that is very appealing to Kirk. It is an old crush named Ruth.
And she doesn't look a day older
than 20. Although this actress was 31 at the time.
Yeah. So I don't want to derail you, because I'm sure you have some really cool information to share, but this particular piece of this episode reminds me a hell of a lot of the Nancy Crater thing.
Okay. Yes.
Right? So it's yet another woman from the past who doesn't look a day older than the last time they saw her, right?
Yeah.
Really, I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I was just mainly pointing out that the actress here, Shirley Bond, born in 1934, was a lot older than 20, which I guess speaks to her genetic makeup, that she was able to pass for 20 at 31, which I'm sure she was very proud of.
You know what? I know a lot of ladies these days who would die to be able to pass for 20 years old at that age. So
I think this is a very, very important aspect of this episode.
Yep.
More so than the Finnegan aspect, is you have this past love of Kirk's life that we know that at some point he left behind.
Right. And you know what? That's going to happen a bunch more times. So we're going to find out that Kirk has been sleeping his way across the galaxy for what could potentially be longer than he's actually existed.
Well, if you put this into the historical perspective, it sounds like it was probably right around the time he was, dealing with Finnegan in Starfleet. She's 20. He was supposed to be, I think 19 or 20 when he was having his problems with Finnegan.
Well, hey, wait a minute. Let's back up.
Okay.
So if he was around 20 when he was having his problems with Finnegan, how old was he when he was dealing with Kodos?
I thought we said 14.
Whoa. Wait a minute. He was already a midshipman at the time that he was dealing with Kodos. So I don't know. Wait a minute. Well, maybe I had to look up Captain Kirk's personal history here. So that was prior to him going through. So his dealings with Kodos were prior to him being a Starfleet cadet.
Yeah, I don't remember the details on the episode, but I do remember doing the math and coming to the conclusion that he was in his teens, because it was 20 years later on that episode.
Okay, so
and Kirk was 34 in that episode.
This is a great chance for everybody listening out there to send me nasty emails and correct me on this. So I'm inviting you to do so. Send me nasty emails and tell me how much of a moron I am for not knowing Kirk's backstory enough to know the timeline.
That is Craig and Jeff at the tricordertransmissions.com.
Thank you, Craig.
No, but you know what? I didn't even think about the Kirk chronology, if you will, when Ruth came into the picture.
We're gonna have to do some research into this.
Yeah,
because now I'm really intrigued. Because he seems to be very enamored with her.
Obviously she was a big part of his life. Yeah,
there's some serious heartache. I mean, he's calling to her, she's walking away.
Yeah,
but not enough to stop her from answering the communicator. Now we're getting a message from Spock. Spock is calling down to the planet, and he's getting some strange readings.
Yeah. There's a power field of some sort.
Yeah, and this is another weird thing. So there's an energy source from the power that it's beginning to affect the Enterprise.
Yeah, their communications are starting to be effective. Kirk's got his communicator cranked up all the way. So it does seem like their ability to communicate is being tested.
Yeah, right. So here's the question. So if Spock is starting to read strange energies coming from inside the planet and it's starting to affect the communication, wouldn't that be an indication of, hey, listen, let's beam the hell back up to the ship? Right? I mean, common sense.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, Kirk just saw Ruth, somebody he hasn't seen in a very long time. He hasn't quite figured out how he's seeing her. So I think Kirk is really caught up sort of in the moment at this point.
Yeah, time to go back to the ship and think about it.
Yeah. So here's something I want to think about and talk about is
Master
this
of
is
the
about
segue.
as pervy as McCoy gets, right? This is kind of a pervy scene.
Yeah.
I mean, I know in earlier episodes you talked about the age gap between Kirk and one of the girls that he was courting. I mean, we don't know how old Yeoman Barrows is here. Yeah. We also don't really know how old McCoy is, but they definitely don't seem like they would be a romantic fit.
No, they certainly
especially
don't.
When he starts asking her to try on this dress.
Hey, listen, man. You're going pervy. I'm going to go pervy too. She is way hotter than Rand was.
Oh yeah.
I can't fault McCoy. Like he's like, look at him looking. He's like, yeah, what the hell? He can't fault him.
Oh no, you know what? He's got some game too. I mean,
oh hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely seems to have the skills to pay those bills, if you know what I mean. And Barrows is played by actress Emily Banks, who in 1960 was elected Miss Rheingold, which was a beer company.
Judge Rheingold?
So she appeared in their advertisements and promotions, and then she went on to an acting career from there.
Nice.
Yeah. And this is, as we stated at the beginning of the show, this is her only appearance. And apparently it's really followed her, and it's something that she considers to be very special.
That's great. So now here he is. He's convincing her not to be scared of this dress that magically appeared that just happens to be her exact size.
Yeah. And this is great. She tells him not to peek, and he says, when I peek, it's in the line of duty.
Yeah, man.
Boom. That's game.
Yeah, boy. Watch it. Now, one has to wonder if he actually peeked, because you don't really see. Oh, he's getting communicators going off. Always at the wrong time.
Yeah, and it's Rodriguez calling, and McCoy pretty much gives him the brush off. He says, I'm having a hard time to hear you.
He's looking. He keeps glancing over here. And see, now we're getting some illustration that the communication is getting garbled. They're having some trouble. Yeah. Can't read each other well. Yeah,
see, I thought that was McCoy playing around. I didn't make the connection that it was related to their communication problems.
Yeah. So what the devil's wrong with that? There's McCoy getting a little bit annoyed. He's getting annoyed, as he always does. Esteban. That brings me back to to the Life Aquatic.
Yes.
Hey, there's the tiger.
Yeah.
There's the tiger.
So this is where we have the scene where Martine and Rodriguez are, within inches or feet proximity to a tiger.
A living, breathing tiger that Shatner originally wanted to wrestle.
Yes, until he saw him. But Rodriguez has a phaser on his belt that he doesn't seem to want to use.
Yeah, you would think you could see it. It's clearly right there.
I mean, we learn later that phasers are ineffective.
Right, but he didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, it just seemed weird to me that they would be, sort of gripped in fear, and he has his weapon at his disposal that could deal with this tiger in a humane manner.
Yeah, boom, could have stunned it.
Yeah.
And here she is in the princess dress with accompanying headpiece.
Yeah.
And cutting back to the Enterprise back in orbit again. So there's Spock.
Yeah. And we've got some interesting terrain that we are seeing that we're going to get a very nice reveal in a second when we get some more Finnegan.
Yeah, this is a really... Kirk is in like a rocky, sandy area.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like, if you really stop to think about it, that they were just in a sort of a green foresty area.
Yeah.
It's interesting that these two different types of terrain would be so closely mixed together.
Yeah, I think in reality they were about a half-hour drive apart.
Yeah.
And I think they just wanted to,
vary it up.
Yeah, but also I guess showcase the the exotic nature of this planet would lend itself to, the sort of this lush forest-like environment, and then this rocky sort of terrain. Yeah. And we get the trap door is going to open.
Yeah, we're going to get a really cool scene right here. Boom.
And this is where we learn the phasers aren't working. And the thing that's interesting here is Sulu tries all three settings. He tries kill, stun, and disintegrate.
Yep, and none of them work. And so what was he doing thinking about a samurai warrior? And he comes running right by where Kirk is, too. Captain, take cover.
Yeah.
There's a samurai after me.
Yeah, it does seem weird. I mean, he's walking through this this cavern-like environment. What would make you think of maybe you can say, oh, if this was feudal Japan, maybe I'd be a samurai. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what I guess you really can't telegraph what they had going on in their minds.
Mm-hmm.
And now here we're going to find out that Kirk's phaser also does not work.
Yeah. But that also brings up the interesting question is, I mean, I only know how my mind works, but, there's times where I'm thinking of things, sort of a mile a minute. I mean, like, if you're really not focused on one thought, you might think about a lot of things in the course of 10 seconds.
Yeah, good point. And now we're seeing Spock is attempting to beam down, or he's trying to beam down, and they're assuming something's obstructing it, but he makes it down.
Yeah, and we learn that Spock did some mathematical equations and realized they had only had enough transporter power to beam one person down. So he said, even though the captain told me not to, I can't communicate with him. I must beam down to the planet.
Yep, that shows.
And it seems like Spock was like, "Hey, I'm not going to miss out my chance for some action here."
Yeah, but you know what? That's also kind of illogical. So a little contrary Spock behavior there.
Yeah,
and
especially
look, McCoy's holding hands with barrels. Look at this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so McCoy's getting some play. First time since Mantrap.
Yeah,
and it won't happen much more. He better enjoy it. So here's a very significant scene.
Oh, yeah. And I'd imagine that back in 1966, before, the rules of Star Trek were sort of established in terms of what characters could and couldn't do or what events in a character's life really meant without spoiling what's about to come up here. But I'd imagine that this moment was pretty, eventful.
Yeah, I think it was kind of jarring.
Yeah, definitely, because McCoy's basically saying these are hallucinations. It's our imagination, and a hallucination cannot hurt you.
You would think, but we find in future, and in Next Generation actually, we find out that even computer projections can actually hurt us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now here's cool. McCoy doesn't believe that this Black Knight is a real thing.
Yeah,
he's like, you know what? Bring it on, illusion. I'm not scared of you. And Dun dun dun.
And Kirk fires 3 additional shots from the gun that Sulu shot 4 from, for a total of 7 shots out of a 6-shooter.
Well, that was a special revolver.
Well, and you could also make the argument that this was a gun that was created for the purpose of amusing Sulu. So
maybe
it could have had
ammo.
infinite amounts of bullets. But
so we just learned McCoy is dead.
Yeah.
So now McCoy, that makes McCoy the achievement holder. He's the first of the 3 major characters to croak. Wouldn't be the last, but would be the first.
And at this point, McCoy wasn't really top-lined in the opening titles.
Nope.
So if you're watching this, you're saying, oh my God, this is it. The character I love so much is dead.
Yeah.
And like I said, as the series went on, we learned never to fully believe a character was dead until we saw them launched into space for their final rest. Well, no, even then
he's
count,
not dead
because they could land on the Genesis planet.
No character in the original series is officially dead
until they come back.
Fall off a bridge and land on some rocks. That's when you're actually dead. And you know what? I don't want to bring Next Generation into this, but McCoy dying here so unceremoniously and in such a silly, nonsensical way reminds me a lot of the way they killed off Tasha Yar in the Next Generation. You remember that one?
Yeah, she gets killed by that big oil
goop monster. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, really, and when I saw that episode for the first time, The Next Generation, I thought to myself, they're really going to kill her like that? I thought they were going to bring her back at the end of the episode, kind of like they bring other characters back from death. But no, they didn't.
And that was early in the Next Generation run, too. That was within, I guess, the first dozen or so episodes of that first season.
She wasn't around long, I don't think.
Yeah. And then she came back. I think she played her sister.
Yeah, I'm not a big expert on Next Generation, but that kind of reminds... I kind of drew a mental parallel when I saw that the death of Tasha Yar and the way that she went out.
Yeah.
It kind of drew a parallel to the way that McCoy went out in this episode.
Yeah. So now we're learning that this night is actually made up from the same kind of cellular structure that everything else on the planet has.
Kind of cool.
The trees, the plants, everything.
Yeah.
This night is the same material.
It's a very interesting concept to me. It makes you... Spock just said that everything's being manufactured. We don't know, Kirk is questioning by what and why, but Spock has figured out that they're being created somehow on this planet of whatever materials are available. And you can see by looking at the knight's face that he's made of some sort of a strange looking waxy... There's a little shot of looks like almost like a Japanese Zero or something flying over.
And for some reason, Rodriguez was telling Martine about World War II aircrafts.
Yeah, why? Yet another inexplicable, and here, I don't know I have to look at the timing of this, but her fiance just got killed.
Yeah.
What's she doing hugging on this dude?
Well, maybe that's her grieving process.
Yeah, I guess so.
But she doesn't have to worry about it for long because...
Tell us why.
She is going to join her fiance.
Okay.
At least momentarily.
Well, she deserves it.
Oh, no. And I tell you, I love that moment where she hits the tree and then falls backwards. Very effective.
Yeah, very convincing, too.
Yeah. And, Rodriguez not responding well. This is actor Perry Lopez, who died in 2008. And, he was a working actor. He did a lot of B movies and Westerns. He was also in Creature from the Black Lagoon. And he also was probably best known, aside from Star Trek, for the role of Lieutenant Escobar in Chinatown with Jack Nicholson, as well as its 1990 sequel, The Two Jakes.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. I love how all these actors who've been on Star Trek episodes go on to do other neat things.
Yeah. It's kind of neat to see how Star Trek was sort of one of the ports you sort of had to come through on your acting journey.
Stuff. Yeah.
So McCoy's body has been dragged off.
Yep. and
Now,
along with the Black Knight's body.
yeah. And in an early version of Sturgeon's script, you actually saw mechanical arms pick it up and carry it away.
Oh, no, get rid of it. That's awesome.
Yeah, and budgetary concerns sort of made that go away, but at the same time, they didn't want it to be as obvious what was going on this planet, so it was reduced really more to just the antenna.
And here we go with friggin' Finnegan again,
which is great. I really like the Finnegan character.
Do you?
Actor Bruce Mars. Yeah, I think he. I mean, it might be the performance that I like so much, but I kind of just like this guy that
I can agree.
He seems to just enjoy screwing around with Kirk.
Yeah, that's another problem I have with this episode. Is that Kirk's behavior varies wildly between episode to episode. So you have him in a complete death scenario in a prior episode where he's facing complete and total death and he's stone faced and he's facing it down with this intestinal fortitude that very few people can muster. But yet again, here we are with Kirk chasing down Finnegan for apparently no reason. Why couldn't he keep his cool now?
Yeah, and they're at Vasquez Rocks, which we're going to see later in the series.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Looks familiar.
Yes, and it is the site of another great battle. There's a great fist fight here. If you're interested in more Finnegan, though, if you dig out the comic book stories, you could look at Star Trek Annual from DC Comics, Volume 2, Number 2, which had a story called Starfleet Academy, Old Loyalties in Finnegan's Wake. And you've got some stories that include Finnegan in the 2280s as a commander serving as an investigator in the Federation Security Legion.
Wow.
For people out there like me, I guess, that are Finnegan fans, there is more Finnegan fiction, if you will, for us to explore.
Yeah, and there's even a little Finnegan homage in another one of my favorite TV shows. If you're a fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000, there was an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000 where Mike Nelson is on the shore leave planet, and they attempt to bring back people that he remembers from his past, and the first person they bring back is Finnegan.
Oh, wow.
Who proceeds to torture and berate and beat up Mike Nelson. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I highly recommend you seek that one out if you're a Finnegan fan.
Yeah, that's great. And one thing, the actor here playing Finnegan, Bruce Mars, he actually shows up on 2 other episodes, not as Finnegan, though.
Right.
One, he's a background actor, and I read it earlier today, and I cannot remember the other episode he pops up in. But he did background work in one, and then full character work in another.
Oh, cool. Now my question to you
either
is,
as Finnegan, yes.
My question to you is, when he appears in the other episodes, do they still play a little Irish jig music?
This is one of the episodes that has music that was created specifically for this episode. Gerald Fried created music for this episode that went on to be used in other episodes down the line. But there were a handful of episodes in this first season that were scored directly for an episode, and this is one of those. So I can't imagine you would have been able to find source music to do Finnegan's theme.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Now, you see how ripped up Kirk's shirt is there?
Oh yeah.
It didn't look like it was that ripped during the fight scene, but
I mean, I haven't been in a lot of fights, but I can't remember one fight I've been in that resulted in torn shirt like this.
You've been in fights? I never heard about these.
Not as an adult, but
Oh, we gotta talk about these sometime.
But the thing is, I mean, they're throwing kicks and punches here, and they're grappling a little bit. But I mean, Finnegan's shirt's not all torn to shreds.
No, well, I guess he's kicking Kirk's butt. And what's that little flower on Finnegan's shirt supposed to be?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's part of the Starfleet uniform for that time period.
Really?
Yeah, I'd assume that he is in Starfleet dress.
Wow, look at that was a hell of a haymaker he hit Kirk with. Wow.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I can't believe Kirk is, I'll tell you, he's getting up. And the phaser hasn't fallen off his belt yet either.
Yeah. And this is pretty impressive because Finnegan is 20 years old. You know, Kirk's in his mid-30s or early to mid-30s at this point, and he is going toe-to-toe with Finnegan. He is actually going to finally accomplish what he wasn't able to do when he was younger.
Yeah, well, this is...
Oh, the kidney blow.
Yeah, well, this is also plant-based Finnegan as opposed to human Finnegan. So, we, you know, I guess we can assume that these plant-based recreations are as strong and agile as their potential human counterparts.
I'd imagine that everything Finnegan is doing is based on Kirk's memory of him. So they could actually be going through a sequence of moves that already happened.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. I wonder if, you know, these manifestations, I guess we can only assume that they are created based on the memory of them that the person has. But so are we expected to believe that Don Juan is some violent, you know, you would think that if she was thinking about Don Juan, she was thinking of being romanced, right?
Yeah.
And swept off her feet, not about being attacked.
Yeah, which is definitely nothing. I don't think I've ever heard the Don Juan story where he was kind of a little aggressive in terms of the touching department.
Well, he you know, he's a great lover and all of that kind of stuff. But, you know, you would think that if she was fantasizing about Don Juan, she wouldn't be fantasizing about having her, you know, getting beat up and having her shirt ripped, right? She would be thinking about romance, I would imagine.
You know what? And earlier you did mention about how relevant Don Juan would be in this time period. If nothing else, wouldn't she have been thinking of maybe like the Dos Equis guy?
The most interesting man in the world, eh?
That's one direction they could have went with the remasters.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the most interesting man in the world.
You know, and speaking of interesting things, that Spock finds Kirk's fight with Finnegan very interesting in his study of people and humans and their emotional outbursts and their needs for revenge and physical violence. So now Spock has reasoned out that all of these things are being created by our minds, and that we must control our thoughts.
Yeah, including a tiger with a visible chain around his neck.
Yep, there it is again. Now, why is the tiger showing up here with them as opposed to where Rodriguez is? Since Rodriguez is the one that thought about him.
Well, Spock mentioned it,
That's true. That's true.
But why does it have a chain around its neck?
Well, you mean for real or in this particular universe? Maybe Spock imagined the chain.
Yeah, and now we've got the bomber.
Yep, there's the bomber again. And you know, well, actually, pretty good way to avoid the bullets by getting up against the rocks there. Although they were still kind of wide open for those bullets.
Yeah.
And there's the samurai again.
Yeah, he takes a nice hit.
Now, you'd think he could get nerve pinched or something. And she took the dress off and put on her ripped uniform again.
Yeah, and there's Don Juan again.
There he is.
And this is great because Sulu is ready to engage him in hand-to-hand, which is really, really awesome.
And hey, look, Don Juan's got a rapier.
One thing I really like about this episode is the amount of action in it. I mean, Star Trek wasn't always an action series.
No.
But when the episodes had action on them, you know, it really, you know, took the series to another level. Robert Spar did a tremendous episode directing this episode. He was a screenwriter, TV director, film director, and also an editor. And tragically, he died in 1969 while scouting locations with Star Trek cinematographer Gerald Finnerman. He died in a plane crash. Finnerman survived, but we definitely lost him way too early. And what a tragic way to go.
That is, it's a shame. So before we talk about the caretaker here, Kirk just called all of these officers to attention.
Yes.
Is that something that we don't see that very often? Is it something that we're going to see again? Because that was very militaristic, and we usually don't see stuff
military
like that.
aspect of Starfleet. Yeah.
Yeah, the attention, and he was giving out orders like, you're standing at attention, don't think, pay attention to me, concentrate.
Yeah.
So something that you probably don't see again. I don't recall ever seeing that again.
I don't, but who knows? Maybe we're gonna get some emails regarding that as well.
Well, you know what? I requested emails already. Bring on some more. We add that in there.
Mm-hmm. So here's where we sort of get our nice little tidy wrap up. That all of this was just a race providing a virtual playground, if you will.
Yeah.
And, Kirk has a great line where he says, the more complex the mind, the greater the desire for play, or something to that effect, which is very cool. And then we get the reveal that McCoy is alive and well, and he's with some showgirls.
Yep.
From what, Rigel 2?
I think you might be right on that.
Yeah.
They've got some strange costumes, though.
Yeah.
Some fuzzy, weird, and they got these little belly button jewels or whatever they have.
Yeah, very sort of progressive.
And here she's mad.
Yeah.
I thought we had something going. How did her uniform get fixed?
I don't know. I don't know if when she put it back on,
Rigel 2.
She, because you can sort of see the top of the tunic isn't 100%. So I don't know if she sort of, had some safety pins on her.
Maybe she found a sewing kit under a rock.
Maybe she imagined a sewing kit.
Maybe she figured this all out, before, and she started thinking about good things, right? And then she's going to take her McCoy back.
Yes.
And the girls are just going to go. And did you see the look on Spock's face when the chick was approaching him?
Yeah, Spock's like, hey, man,
All right. The human half of me, I'm on shore leave. Why the hell not?
Yeah. Now, this is sort of this is going to be an interesting discussion, and I think we should start this discussion early.
You sure?
And it's the essential nature of this episode.
Okay, I had a couple more notes to share.
All right. Well, let's go. Let's make sure we leave some time for our discussion about the essential nature. But yeah, let's blow out whatever you wanted to cover.
We'll have time.
All right.
So a couple of notes. Roddenberry thought that the original script for this episode had too much fantasy.
Sure.
And you know what? I think the rewritten script still has too much, but I think he was definitely right. But something really cool about this episode that has happened a little bit before is that this is another one of those episodes where the preview has a shot that was not included in the episode.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So Yeoman Barrows was being accosted by Don Juan in her princess costume in the preview, but that shot was not included in the episode.
All right.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with that removal.
So there was also a submission for a sequel to this episode titled Shore Leave 2 that was never actually made. We don't know. There's no record of whether or not it was reused in part or whole for the animated series episode where they revisit this planet. Let's see. There was also supposed to be an elephant brought onto this show, this episode that never happened.
Yes.
And this is yet another episode with no Scotty.
Oh, you know what? I didn't catch that, but
yep. Once again, no Scotty. So anyway, go ahead.
All right. So I think who knows? We never really talk about our feelings on an episode prior to recording.
Yep.
So I wanted to make sure we leave some time for our essential discussion, and I'll lead.
Okay.
I will say that, for a standalone episode of this series, they're all standalone, but this one really feels more of a pocket episode than some others. It is highly regarded by a lot of casual Star Trek fans as one of the more memorable episodes. And I think for the ability to have to know about this episode for the, a cocktail party type environment, the fact that we learn a little bit about Kirk's Starfleet experience or his Starfleet Academy experience with Ruth and Finnegan, has this episode fall on the essential side for me? Like I said, based on how popular it is, you can't go to sort of a social gathering and talk about Star Trek and say, oh, I haven't seen Shore Leave.
Interesting. Well, it looks like we're going to be at odds on this one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, I have to keep in my my mind frame of what I consider essential. And while I can, give you the nod that it gives you a little bit of, the whole Finnegan thing and the Ruth thing about, Kirk and back in his academy days, I don't necessarily think that's really significant in relation to other pieces of Kirk backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Do we really need to know that he dated a chick named Ruth? Do we really need to know that he had a bully by the name of Finnegan? I don't necessarily know if that really qualifies as great Kirk backstory that you can think of going forward as being part of the character building. So I really don't know if I can call it essential on that angle. No memorable villains in this episode, really.
Aside from Finnegan.
He's not a villain. He's not a villain. Come on, man. That doesn't count in my book. That's not a villain. I can't go with a villain on that one. The shore leave planet was used again in the animated series, but I don't know. I can't hang my hat on this episode as being essential. And before we close out on this, I'm gonna say that I find it particularly distressing that both Kirk and McCoy can both die and come back, but Kirk can't. Come on, man. Kirk dies. They brought the other two guys back when they died. Yeah. Why couldn't Kirk come back after he died?
Well, there really wasn't a window for him to come back.
They could have made one.
Well, and we did talk about sort of the book series that William Shatner wrote a couple years later called Star Trek: The Return.
Yeah.
Where, if I remember correctly, I've read this series of books, but it was back in the 90s, where I believe the Borg resurrect Kirk for some kind of nefarious purpose.
Yeah. The other two guys get to come back and jump right back into their lives again. And I don't know. I mean, the books, some fans will say that's canon, but I don't know if things that I don't necessarily know how I feel about things that weren't put to film as being considered canon. I don't know, because it's not necessarily something that tons of people would have seen.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would consider that as an official resurrection of Kirk in mainstream Star Trek.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to put that topic to bed because it seems like Star Trek in general has put that topic to bed.
No, it hasn't. Damn it. All right.
Yeah, and I guess that brings us to the end of another episode. This one was very fun to talk about. I'm sorry that we were sort of split at the end there. But hey, that's the way it goes with Star Trek fandom. You win some, you lose some.
All right.
But
at the beginning, we're going to win more. So let's hold on to these precious wins before we get to season 3.
All right, and that brings us to a close. I guess we will talk to you next week for another installment of the Tricorder Transmissions.
All right, this has been great. Take it easy, everybody.
Shore Leave is one of our more playful stories. There are a number of episodes where we got to have some fun by putting our characters into some very unlikely situations. And this episode is full of them. A recurring theme in Star Trek is that it's necessary to maintain a balance between pleasure and responsibility. Shore Leave, therefore, is a cautionary tale. Even pleasure carried to extremes can be dangerous.